Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie, the board game buccaneer, and today I want to introduce you all to Cascadia, a wonderful tile-laying game designed by Randy Flynn and with artwork by Beth Sobel. This is published by AEG and Flat Out Games. Now, back in 2016, my parents took a holiday to Canada, and they came back and explained how wonderfully beautiful the Pacific Northwest was. They loved their time in British Columbia. And since I've been trying to get them into more board games recently, I was on the lookout for something that was fairly simple and straightforward to play, but interesting enough to keep them hooked. And when I saw Cascadia and it had that theme of, well, Cascadia, British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest, this seemed absolutely perfect. So how is it? Now, the basic underlying premise of Cascadia is very, very simple. Players are going to be drafting tiles each turn to build their own slice of the Pacific Northwest, scoring points based on who has the largest contiguous areas of a particular habitat, whether that's forests, meadows, wetlands, rivers, or mountains. That in itself is so much your typical tile-laying experience. But Cascadia takes it a step further by adding an additional layer on top, where you're placing animals and hoping to score those. You see, in addition to scoring points based on your habitats, each of the animals in them wants to have different conditions met. Hawks, for example, want to be the only hawk in a particular area. Salmon want to have curly runs. Elk want to be marching in lines. Bears want to be paired up, and foxes just want a whole bunch of friends around them, and they'll score more points based on the more stuff they have nearby. That's not even to say that every game of Cascadia is going to work that exact way either. You'll see there is an entire slew of scoring cards included in the box that allow you to mix things up. Whereas the basic version of bears, for example, wants them to be pairs, sometimes they want to be in full, cute little families. And this allows you to mix up your games. By shuffling these cards and picking random ones, you can have wildly different scoring conditions that are loosely thematically based around each other every game you play, which can make for a very different experience each time. Every player starts with one of these triple starting habitats, and then each turn there's going to be 4 tiles in front of them, each paired with an animal that they can choose. So I could go for this complete meadow with a bear. I could go for this forest and meadow split tile with an elk. I could go for this river and mountain with a fox, or I could go for this particular mountain and forest with a hawk. Now, sometimes you're not necessarily going to want these together. For example, this hawk can't go on this tile because it doesn't match the symbol. The fox can't go on this tile because it doesn't match the symbol. The elk can go on this tile, but that would kind of be selling it short. Because remember, I've already got my starting, and so I may just want to grab the hawk and put that here, meaning I'll need to find somewhere else for that other tile though. That might actually be a good idea, so let's take those ones. I then need to add this into my environment somehow. I'm going to rotate that so that we have the mountain and the forest matching, and now I need to find a home for my hawk. There's only one place he can go, so he's going to go on that particular tile, and then we refresh all of this up here, drawing new tokens from this beautiful linen bag. Oh look, it's another hawk. But there are times when perhaps a certain token is going to give you some nice little advantages. If you ever see an animal on a tile with this little fur cone next to it, that means if you put the animal on there, you get one of these little fur cone markers. These are incredibly useful as they allow you to essentially do things like take a tile with a different token, or reset everything, or just basically play around. They're also worth victory points at the end of the game, so holding onto them if you don't need them can be really beneficial. And so players will take it in turns, grabbing these tiles, adding them to their different habitats, and then adding the animals on top of that. Again, always bearing in mind what your animal scoring condition is going to be for this particular game. Now, some of you more seasoned board gaming players may be familiar with another tile-laying game produced by AEG, known as Calico, or the game that made Benzie hate cats. You see, Calico has that similar idea of you're drawing tiles and adding them to your play area in front of you with the hopes of making a beautiful quilt that not only scores points on its own inherent beauty, but also based on things like the buttons that you can add to it and whether or not it pleases the, quite frankly, aggressively rude cats in the game. Now, Calico is a fantastic game, don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoy Calico, no matter how much it seems to hate me. Cascadia, on the other hand, I do genuinely think is the better tile-laying experience. You see, the theme for it is a little bit less abstract. You're building a habitat and populating it with wildlife, which makes it really thematically simple to teach to literally anyone. On top of that, the fact that you are not constrained by a board like you are in Calico, and can indeed place your tiles anywhere in your habitat, sprawling out narrow and thin, or doing a thick, dense cluster, gives the player just that little bit more agency. In addition, that extra layer of not just building the habitat, but also trying to layer your groups of animals on top of that, you're literally playing two games at once. But each of those games, notably, is just simple enough that it never feels completely overwhelming. Yes, you're going to be pulled into decisions you don't want to have to make. You're sitting there looking at the tiles in front of you going, I really, really want that elk to extend my line or that salmon to extend my run, but I really don't want the tile that's placed with it, and I don't have any Douglas firs to mess around with that. On the other hand, I could take this one to get that bear onto the tile to get a Douglas fir for next time, and oh damn, someone else has just taken the tile that I wanted and it hasn't refreshed with anything useful for me. It is remarkably thinky without it actually being aggressively so. You're essentially just creating a beautiful stretch of landscape and putting cute animals in it, right? That's really easy for almost anyone to get behind, and I've had my parents involved in this, I've played it with friends and other family. It's a great board game for literally anyone because it's quick and easy to teach, the setup is nice and simple, and the basic premise links in effectively. But what it then does with that is astonishing. Having to remember these point scoring on top of trying to build all of your actual habitats underneath it all, it's just confusing enough that it keeps players on their toes without ever being overwhelming. In addition to that, I just want to talk about this beautiful section here of the rulebook, the achievements. Now, this isn't designed to make the game solo-friendly or anything. No, indeed, it is designed to just encourage you to play the game more and try different things. So you have different scenarios on this page where it tells you what of the point scoring cards to use for the animals during setup, and this will make more or less complex games. And if you can complete these, well, you knock them off. Just cross them off in this booklet and it'll tell you how well you're doing. And there's a little track here on the left-hand side that just gives you something to work towards and aim towards. I love the fact that this game is not a legacy game in any way, but it's basically asking you to play it just to see how good you can get at it. It's such a simple thing to add into a rulebook, but I really like this. Alongside the fact that they give loads of facts and information about the wildlife as well, just to really keep that theme front and center, and as they talk about at the beginning of the rulebook, maybe even inspire you to go visit. It is abundantly clear that Randy Flynn and the team at Flat Out Games absolutely adore the area that they are showcasing in this game. Everything from the beautiful artwork by Beth Sobel through to the just peaceful nature of the game with just enough aggression to feel just like Mother Nature hates you a little bit. It just feels so thematic, it feels cared about, it feels loved. There are so many just small details sprinkled throughout the rulebook, throughout the artwork, throughout the tiles and tokens themselves that just make this feel like a game that was designed out of pure love and pleasure. And it is great. I love the quality of the bag that you have the tokens in. The tiles themselves are cardboard, but nice and thick and sturdy. The Douglas firs are simplistic, but straightforward. I also really like the fact that they're cardboard and not acrylic, that it's wood and not acrylic. Again, this is a game about nature, and it feels natural. It feels fibrous and earthy. And on the subject of accessibility, if you're concerned that having 5 different wildlife scoring in 5 different ways on top of the basic tile laying procedure might be a bit too much for someone in your family, there's also the family variant included that simplifies things to keep things accessible for younger gamers. Instead of having each of the 5 animals score in different ways, each of the animals scores in the same way of essentially wanting to be at least 3 of them together. It's nice and straightforward, and it means that the top level game of putting the animal tokens into the environment is just that little bit simpler. And once players understand this and have played a round or 2 of the family variant, you can flip this over to an intermediate variant that rewards slightly larger shapes. Nothing scores for being on its own anymore, you do need to at least pair, trio, or quadruple them. Once a few rounds of those have been played, well, players should have a firm understanding on how that works, and so we can split the 5 animals out into their different cards and have those scoring conditions. Again, just like the achievement section of the rulebook, these cards mean that there is just this reward for playing the game more. It's enticing new players in with a simplistic variant that then can be made slightly more complex before diving into the full experience. It's at this point in the video that I ask the question, does Cascadia join our crew, or do we make it walk the plank? And if it's not clear at this point in the video, I don't know how else I can say it. I adore Cascadia. I think it is simple enough to teach to new players. The theme integrates really nicely with the basic mechanics of the game to be readily understandable, and that helps it along its way. But it's also thinky enough that it never feels simplistic. And for more experienced board gamers, there is plenty of crunch to sink your teeth into here. The fact that those animal cards can change from game to game and change your scoring conditions completely is delightful, and it just means you want to keep coming back to Cascadia for more and more. But is this the kind of game that you can play on a voyage, or is it something you need to weigh anchor for? It is a little bit of a larger game. It's definitely a tabletop game, not the kind of thing you can really take down the pub. That said, it's 1 to 4 players, and it will fit on a standard family's table like this. More than enough space on your standard dining room table to get this one out and start having some fun building up your own slice of the Pacific Northwest and filling it with wonderful wildlife. Now, perhaps you've played Cascadia, perhaps you've lived or traveled out to that particular region of the world. If you have, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section down below. Hit like on the video if you enjoyed this, consider subscribing for more, and if you do want to help support this channel, you can head across to Patreon or my PayPal tip jar and pledge a small donation just to help keep me going. Anyway, folks, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I really hope you enjoy Cascadia half as much as I do. I think this is a wonderful game, and I really, truly believe everyone out there should play it. Randy Flynn, if by some chance you stumble across this video, really well done to you and the team. This is a delight, and I love it to pieces. Thanks for watching, folks. Happy sailing, and see you all next time.